The reaction to the shocking assassination of Charlie Kirk while speaking in front of students in Utah continues to come in. I spoke with Sheriff Mark Lamb, formerly of Pinal County, Arizona. You know the sheriff from Live PD and other places. He was friends with Charlie, who had moved to Arizona. They ate together. They spoke together on the stage. And now he's gone. He talks about the importance of keeping that message alive. He talks about who Charlie Kirk really was and a whole lot more. Then he speaks on how he would investigate such a case like this. And then I've got former Secret Service agent for more than 25 years, Darin Kinder. He was based in Building 7 at the World Trade Center on 9/11. He went into Building 1. He went in to save lives. He was actually awarded the Medal of Valor. This guy has a story, and that story's in his book called Bury Me in a Dirty Suit. Both those interviews together right now on Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags. Make sure you subscribe.
This is Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags.
Former Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb. Mark, how are you? It's good to see you today.
We're doing okay. I mean, look, this was a horrific day yesterday. I mean, obviously today is 9/11 is being overshadowed by what happened yesterday.
Yes.
And first of all, condolences to Charlie's family, to his kids, his wife, and to the Turning Point family as well. I know so many of them. I was friends with Charlie. We've shared the stage on so many events. And look, this is a big loss to his family. It's a big loss to Arizona, to America. Frankly, Charlie was just one of those people that was. He was very courageous in what he stood up for, and his belief in God and this country and the Constitution. And he was so intelligent. It's a tragedy to lose somebody like him.
It really is, and a lot of people don't know what you just mentioned. He was from Chicago and very proud of that, but moved to Arizona, moved the entire operation out to Arizona, TPUSA, so became very good friends with you and Kerry Lake and the other people who are very smart conservatives from that area. So I didn't even realize that before we started talking. So you must have run into him in circles all the time, and what the guy was doing, Mark, is what you do. Now, you were law enforcement, so you could do more than Charlie could have, more than I can as a conservative, but he was just using his value system, his value set to go out there and talk to people, to debate people. Had you ever heard the guy say even an insulting word to somebody? I know he wasn't violent, but I don't think he ever even insulted anybody he was debating.
No, what happened, though, is he would dominate those conversations, and he had reason. And these other folks worked off of emotion, and they were angry with him because once they lose the argument, the next thing is that you become name-calling, and then now we're seeing violence. This hit home on many levels. Not only was Charlie a friend, we were at many events together. I know a lot of the Turning Point family, and they even hired my son when he came back off of a mission. They gave him a job, and my son was the guy that stood 5 feet from Charlie and filmed the people and Charlie. And so they had just asked my son the other day if he was willing to come back out and start filming with them again. Had they asked him to be at that Utah event, because my daughter-in-law is from Utah, it was very likely that my son would have been at that event. So this hit home for us on many levels. I've been messaging back and forth with a lot of people that are part of the Turning Point family. But more than anything, Joe, one of the other things, not more than anything, but one of the other things is like you mentioned, I am the same type of voice as Charlie. Charlie, obviously a much bigger voice, but I'm out there talking about my faith and about this country and about what is right, about preserving the Constitution. And it sends a message. It tries, I think this is their intent, is to send a message to those who would open their mouth and stand up for freedom and what is right, to say, we don't want to hear your voice anymore. And I'll be darned if I'm going to allow them to silence me. And I don't think Charlie would want anybody to be silenced as well. He was unafraid, he was unapologetic, and he did it in a way that was kind, and he never offended, he never made nasty comments towards people. He did it in a way that was very intelligent and very direct, but he did it in a way that was, I think, never disparaged any one person.
Never. And you're right. What you said is so right. It's Sheriff Mark Lamb. Go to, it's sherifflamb.com now, right, Mark?
Yep, or you can also go to 107consulting.com. Yeah, but yes.
Okay, go and check that out. It's Sheriff Mark Lamb. You're so right about what you said. He would dominate the conversation. He would win the debate rather easily. And for some people who are weak-minded, weak in every way. They couldn't take that. They couldn't just say, you know what, man, you opened my eyes and I got it. And I think the broader problem with Charlie Kirk in the mind of these lunatics is that he reached an entire generation. Generation Z voted for Donald Trump probably because of Charlie Kirk. Did you play a role? Sure. Did I? A little bit. But Charlie Kirk was talking on college campuses and people were going, whoa. He was opening minds and he was telling people that what you're hearing is just one side of it. Here's the other side of it. And now you have a voice in this great republic that we love. Mark, I think that was the bigger problem. Do you agree?
Yeah, that was the bigger problem. They didn't like the fact that he influenced that last election just by touching these this Generation Z they're frustrated with government, and they were very vulnerable and open to being pulled over into common sense. And that's what Charlie did. Charlie Kirk would go on these school campuses and he would talk about America and God and freedom and all of these things. And he did it in a way that was backed up by scripture, by history, yes, and all of these things. And he did it to the point where people would get frustrated. And we live in such a fragile, weak society that people, if they can't get their way, they throw a fit or they hate you because you think different than they do. And that is a dangerous place to be in society. And unfortunately, we saw that unfold in a horrific and frankly, cowardly act of violence against somebody that was merely speaking his mind. It just was different than what some of these, honestly, people with mental health problems out there.
Yes.
And they're being fueled. One more thing, they're being fueled by media and politicians who continue to throw fuel on the fire. When you have politicians like Gavin Newsom or the guy Tim Walz who ran for vice president calling ICE Gestapo and other things and making disparaging comments about people on the right or people who believe in freedom, this emboldens and it drives these people with mental health problems to action, and it's oftentimes ugly action like we saw yesterday.
Spot on as always. It's Sheriff Mark Lamb, retired Pinal County, Arizona. J.B. Pritzker from Illinois just a few days ago said ICE is going to come here, protest, take out your phones, take video, get in their faces. And then yesterday he says, I don't know what's going on with the political rhetoric, and I think that Donald Trump is the reason why Charlie Kirk is dead. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that was his intention. Mark, I don't think those people are mentally ill, J.B. Pritzker and Gavin Newsom and those who are in leadership. I think they think they're monarchs. And I think they want it to be a kingdom where they control the peasants. And we're not playing that game. Trump isn't playing that game. Charlie Kirk wasn't playing that game. So, I mean, one last word on that, if you don't mind. It's not, I don't think I'm giving you any breaking news that those who are now today decrying political speech and rhetoric are the ones who are the biggest, loudest voices in that realm.
Not only that, they're worse than that, because what they are using is they're using their wealth, their influence to drive racial division, to drive religious division, to drive division amongst those who want safe communities as opposed to criminals in their communities. On the immigration piece, these people use those people as pawns in their agenda, which makes them worse. They use people who are susceptible to mental health issues to drive and be the thugs on the street for their absolutely ridiculous political stances that they have taken recently. So they are worse than any of these other kind of people, because they are the rich, affluent people who would use vulnerable people to push their message.
It is Sheriff Mark Lamb, retired, Pinal County, Arizona. Go to sherifflamb.com. So let's talk about you as a sheriff. You're the sheriff of that area of Orem, Utah. You get the call into the sheriff's office. What does the investigation look like, Mark?
Well, immediately you're going to have to start identifying who was there. There's a lot of ways you can do that. You're going to start pulling all the cell phone pings from that area, everybody's cell phone that was attached to it. You're going to start to develop a list of potential suspects. You're going to pull the video from Turning Point. You're going to go online and try to harvest as many of the videos you see that are being posted by people that were there at the event. And what you've seen so far is, because of that, we're seeing videos of people on the roof, roof. We're seeing videos of other people in the crowd, suspicious behavior. This is a big net to cast initially, but they've already started to narrow it down by finding somebody that was on the roof. He's going to obviously move into the front as being one of your prime suspects. Anybody that was wearing anti-Charlie Kirk apparel would become a prime suspect. You're going to really start to kind of sift through your suspects. But because all of them fled so quickly, you've got a lot of work to do on narrowing down that pool. But they now have somebody that they're kind of targeting that was on the roof. They've got not only cameras, CCTV from around the school, they've got them going into a neighborhood. They're going to start to pull doorbell ring cameras. They're going to do security cameras from people's houses in that neighborhood. And they're going to really start to tighten up that net and really get down to a handful of potential real suspects.
We're hearing reports, Mark, that they've got the weapon. It looks like it might be a bolt-action rifle. I'm not sure, but that's what's been reported. They also have shell casings that might have something inscribed on them. How important is that? Will that better lead to a suspect, do you think?
Well, the weapon and all those types of things will be evidence for when you actually are going towards prosecution.
Okay.
They may lead you towards a suspect. They may have prints on it. But depending on whether that suspect is in the system, his prints are in the system, it may or may not help you. But it will help you whenever you go to prosecute when they finally do catch this guy. You are going to want to have the weapon. You are going to want to have that stuff. It is very difficult to have a homicide case, even this as visual as this was, if you don't actually have the weapon. So they will do ballistics. They will ensure that this was indeed the weapon that was used. And that weapon will become part of the case as evidence against the person that they finally catch. They may or may not be able to use that to use it to catch the person that did it. But they're hot on this trail. They're going to start to correlate all that. Cell phone ping, CCTV. There's what we call these LPRs, which are license plate readers. Those are they're going to start to expand that and pull every plate that was in that area and start to dive into the license plates and whether or not those folks were at the event in the area. They'll start to put that dragnet out there.
Sheriff, I'm not blaming anybody who is part of TPUSA. I don't want anybody watching or listening to think that I am. But let me ask you a very simple question. You had drones that were broadcasting this live, I believe, to X. There were drones flying above the event. Why don't you go and scan the buildings within 200 yards? I mean, maybe I'm being too simplistic about this, but after Butler, shouldn't we be learning a lesson that you're going to speak in an open air place like you do, like I have, like Charlie did constantly, like the president does? Why wouldn't you at least go and make sure the rooftops are all empty? Because you're right. There's a piece of video that suggests this guy was on a roof 200 yards away. There's a closed caption picture that you just referenced of the actual suspect or the subject they want to talk to. Am I being too much of a simpleton? Don't you fly a drone with our technology today and just make sure we're all clear?
Well, Joe, I'm glad you asked that because the would have, should haves, and could haves are going to be what's flying around right now, and everybody's going to question what happened. But remember, Charlie did these events, thousands of them, without this happening.
Yes.
So Charlie is not the vice president or the president. You don't have the ability to go in and make demands on the school and say, I want to put a sniper up on the roof to protect my speaker. The school's going to say, no, we're not doing that. And the school can't apply that amount of resources because everybody will complain that they put too many resources and use tax dollars or school dollars towards an event for Charlie Kirk. So the limited amount, you're not going to have a limited amount. Now, it's on his security detail. I know a lot of these guys and they do great work. And I promise you today, my heart goes out to not just his family, but also to his employees, because they're going to feel some sense of guilt like they could have done something different. I don't know that you really could have done something different. Even if you scanned the roof an hour before you did the event, maybe he climbs up 10 minutes before this happens. So there's a lot of what ifs. I think that because who he is, he doesn't have the ability to do what, let's say, a senator or especially a vice president or a president would be able to do, to be able to comb that area. I think it was a terrible venue. There was a lot of disadvantage, but it also was a very good venue for being able to get a lot of people in there and share a strong message. You know, in the end, I think Charlie probably espoused the same thing that I do. I don't live afraid. I don't think about what could happen. I have to get out and share a message of truth and light and of common sense and of freedom. And you know what? I've accepted the fact that my message may or may not be cause my demise one day. And this was very sobering for me in a way, but it also was it also tells me you've got to continue to do it. We can't allow them to shut us up, which is what they try to do with actions like this. And once again, I want people to know that this hurt us because we know Charlie, his family. I've seen him on many occasions. My son has been part of the Turning Point family. And so this is a tough one, but at the same time, we cannot let it silence what is common sense and what is the message of good and right in this world.
Couldn't agree more. He was a very nice man. He's been on my show 4 times. We both are in the Salem podcast family. He was the big star, obviously. I was the newcomer, and he was in Dallas for the TPUSA get-together, actually Grapevine, Texas. My daughter and I went up there. They gave us full accommodations. They gave us access to all the guests. He could not have been a nicer guy. And the one time that I invited him on the show that he couldn't make it, he said, damn it, I just can't make it. I'll send somebody else to call in. And at the height of her traction, he had Candace Owens call the show. He was just that nice a guy. He was like, I can't leave this guy Pags in a lurch. He's a friend. He's pushed our message. So I never talk about that. Well, I didn't before he passed. But I think people need to know who this guy was. He wasn't some, violence inciting, bad guy who was some neo-Nazi, whatever they call him. He was none of those things, Mark. I never saw the guy saying a scant word. Was he lively in what he said? Was he loud in what he said? Was he vehement in what he believed? Look, like you, like me? Yes, he was that guy. So the legacy has to go on. I said yesterday his name is going to be known in this country for all of time, for centuries, because of what happened here. And he's gone at 31. I'm guessing you agreed to that. But let me also ask you this. I think TPUSA gets even stronger now. Do you agree?
It depends. Leadership matters. It depends on if they can find somebody with the same type of intelligence and charisma. They've got a lot of very talented people at TPUSA, but I've oftentimes seen, when you lose your leader, it's tough. And so I hope that they do. We need TPUSA. We need Turning Point Action to continue doing the things they've done. They've played such a huge role in this last election with going out and making sure that they were doing the ballot chasing and making sure that people were voting. So we need that strong voice, especially for the youth right now. But we also need the left to understand, we cannot continue to go this direction in this country. When Abraham Lincoln was talking about the Civil War, he talked about how there was a battle of good and evil at that time. And we're once again at this point where there's a battle of good and evil. And the left thinks because nobody's ever punched him in the face or nobody's ever held him accountable, the most dangerous thing in this country is the American who just wants to be left alone. Just leave that man alone. But they won't leave that man alone. And they won't like the outcome of if they continue to go down this road. Look, this behavior will have a day of reckoning, whether it's in this life or the next life. And I pray it be in the next life, not in this life. But they better be careful about how they go about this because people are very angry with the way that government is going and with the way that the left continues to push this evil agenda to the point of taking and assassinating people who have a voice contrary to theirs. I will defend freedom to my death. And I think there's a lot of people that are out there that feel the same way. But I pray that these people recognize the error of their ways and they turn their hearts back to God and the Constitution, and we get this right and we come together as a country again.
It's Sheriff Mark Lamb, retired from Pinal County, Arizona. Go to sherifflamb.com. All very well said, Mark. There are people who are watching now, might be even leaning left a little bit. But generally speaking, those who are conservative, who are watching and listening, are scared today. They're afraid today, and they're always going to have their heads on a swivel now. Because of what I believe, I might be a target. What do you say to them? How should people go forward from this?
Don't be afraid. It's better to live one day as a lion than 1,000 years as a sheep. Look, we're put on this earth for a purpose, and our purpose is to speak about the things that are true and right. Don't hide your belief in God and Jesus Christ. Don't hide your belief and your love for freedom in this country. It is okay to be an American. It is okay to be proud of who you are and what race you are. All of these things are okay. Contrary to what the left wants to say, it is them that is wrong. It is them that is continuing to push an evil agenda. And I'm not against anybody. I can have a conversation with anybody despite our differences, whether we vehemently agree or disagree. I can have that conversation and I won't hate people in the end.
Right.
But we have to be careful how we tread forward. But do not let them, do not silence your voice. Stand up. Thomas Paine, I'll end it with this. Thomas Paine said, and this is so true, back in the days of the Revolutionary War, when he wrote Common Sense and he wrote these pamphlets, he said, "These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will in this crisis shrink from the service of his country. But he who stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph." Do not shy away from what's ahead of us. Now more than ever, we need voices like Charlie Kirk's, and he would say the same thing, and I believe. And he certainly said in his own words that he wants to be known for having courage to defend his faith. And I think now more than ever, we should embody that.
I couldn't agree more. So well said. I'm glad that you brought that quote up. And you're exactly right. We've got to be firm in what it is that we believe, or else you lose the republic. We can all be quiet and be meek and be peasants, but then you lose the republic, you lose your freedoms, you lose everything that was granted to us by the Creator in the Constitution. Last question, Mark. Thanks for making time today. I have to know, as an investigator, as somebody who's done this for his life's work, they're going to find this guy?
Yes. Yeah, I would expect they'll find him in probably the next 24 to 48 hours. Look, it is very difficult with all the amount of CCTV, with the license plate readers, cameras, and all over the place. Witnesses coming forward, especially if they start offering rewards. The FBI, I know the sheriff very well in Utah County. He's a phenomenal sheriff. I know some of the police there in Provo and Orem area. You are not going to get away from this. They will put the full weight of law enforcement. And I think the president and the vice president, the fact that they went and picked the body up and brought it back to Arizona today shows you how invested they are in this. And I just say, thank you, Mr. President, for what you did for the family, and Vice President J.D. Vance. You will not be able to get away from this. They will find this guy. And my guess is that he may not be alone. There may be some other people. And I think that everybody who was involved in this, because it was premeditated, it was an assassination, it was designed to silence political speech. And I think it is the absolute definition of violation of us as Americans, what they did. And I hope that they are found quickly and held responsible to the fullest extent of the law. And I don't think the death penalty is even good enough for something like this.
I could not agree more. It is Sheriff Mark Lamb, retired, Pinal County, Arizona. Go to sherifflamb.com, sherifflamb.com. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for how staunch you are in your beliefs in this great republic, and thank you for everything you do for the country. Best to your wonderful family. And Mark, let's do this again very soon.
Let's do it. And thanks, Joe. And remember, this is 9/11. We live in the greatest country in the world. I know we had a lot going on yesterday and today, but This is the day we remember that we need to come together. So thank you, Joe, for having me on and let me have a voice today. So appreciate it.
And now former agent Darin Kinder on being there for 9/11. But we start with Charlie Kirk and how he would investigate that case. Darin, nice to meet you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
I really appreciate having you on. We had this interview set up, I believe, before we knew about Charlie Kirk yesterday. But it's certainly what you've done and your experience and your knowledge and your story really does lend itself to maybe asking you some questions about what happened yesterday in Utah. When we're looking at that gathering for TPUSA and where Charlie Kirk was assassinated, it was brought to my attention that this was different in that it was almost like a bleachers setting, where normally he would have a flat ground where he's sitting on the same level playing field as 3,000 other people. That would make it much harder for a would-be assassin to do something because you don't have a clear shot. This was in such a form and fashion that if you have a little bit of height, you see the speaker very directly. As a Secret Service guy, when you see that setup, would you have let him go out there?
I mean, it's a really challenging thing. I mean, the people that are setting up the event, they aesthetically want it to look great. It looks great, like the weather looked perfect, and everyone out on a pavilion style where it's sloped down, like you said, and he's in the center. Unfortunately, boxed in and referenced by that pop-up white tent. I mean, that helps the eventual shooter as well.
Right.
Kind of dial it in from an elevated position. That's a no-win situation. I know he had a security detail, and I know I'm told by news reports it was 5 or 6. I'm not sure, but that's more for the close end. They're expecting someone to jump the fence or maybe assault him physically hand to hand. That's for that. But there seemed to be little account for that long range threat.
All we know right now at the time of taping, and it's about 4 o'clock Eastern time as we do this on Thursday, all we know is that they've got the weapon. They've got shell casings. There has been some reporting on what's on the shell casings. It may or may not be true, so I'm not going to report it here. What do you learn from the weapon? What do you learn from the shell casings? Anything?
Yeah, you're going to learn once you have the weapon, you can start backtracking the weapon, hopefully in some way, shape, or form. Shell casings as well. Very hard to wipe off prints off of the casings when they're loading the magazines and so forth. I'm assuming I have heard they have found the weapon as well. Those are the reports. I've heard bolt action rifle. I'm not sure. I'm sure it's a large caliber 308. 30-06, something, 6.5 Creedmoor, something like that, I'm sure. 200 yards or more. Not a weekend, probably not a weekend shooter. Probably not someone who just, picks it up every once a month on the weekend and goes plinking. There certainly seems to be some kind of skill involved. I'm not sure of the wind conditions, that can change a shot, but just a terrible day for America.
Absolutely terrible day, without a doubt. It's Darin Kinder. His book is called "Bury Me in a Dirty Suit." Former Secret Service agent for 25 plus years. I want to get into that in earnest. You also responded, one of the first responders on 9/11. I want to get into that as well. But as we're looking at this, you've got the weapon, you've got the shell casings. We now have pictures that they put out. What do you make of? And Cash Patel is a friend of mine. I'm not criticizing him, but what do you make of the announcement yesterday? We have the subject who did this, and then we didn't have the subject. So initially, in an investigation like this, do you grab people that you want to find out more information from and then figure out if they are in fact somebody that you need to continue talking to? Might they have gotten the actual person that did it, let him go, but they're still watching him? What do you make of what was announced yesterday?
I'm not sure who made the initial announcement that there was a suspect in custody, if that was from the Bureau, if that was from the local police. I'm not sure, but I'll say this. Everyone wants to report and be the first to report and reach out and kind of rush to judgment and rush to announce in this case. And I think it gives me pause to think that maybe a rush to announcement, hey, we have a suspect, even though that wasn't clearly vetted. And then maybe some people let their guard down, and it made it easier for the actual perpetrator to escape the area. That would be the worst case scenario. So I think we take a few breaths, we give some time for the investigation to unfold, and then we hope that there's a full account of each step by step and what happened in the aftermath.
It's Darin Kinder, DarinKinder.com. Go there. Get his book. It's called Bury Me in a Dirty Suit. We see this show on A&E. I don't even know if it still airs, called The First 48 Hours. How important is it to get every speck of information and evidence in the first day or two?
Yeah, 48 hours for a reason, right? Just the trail goes cold. I would be shocked. I'll say this, and this is just an opinion. I'm not basing it on inside knowledge. I would be shocked if this manhunt went beyond 48 hours. With the resources that are being leveraged at the state, federal, local level, they're combing all kinds of video footage and so forth. Now there's a weapon. Now you've got ballistics involved. I think. And in a story this big, the news is everywhere, the face is everywhere, the description is everywhere. The world becomes small really quickly, and there's no place to hide.
It is Darin Kinder. I appreciate the time and the access. Bury Me in a Dirty Suit is his brand new book. I want you to go and check that out. As we watch this unfold, clearly people who are on the conservative spectrum and who have a voice have a fear. You may or may not know this about me, but I'm one of a couple of dozen conservatives that was actually swatted. They sent out 7 sheriff deputies at 2:00 in the morning. Family was dead asleep. Thankfully, I had video cameras, and I saw a guy with a rifle at my front door. They're trying to shut us up. Again, this isn't really in your experience purview, but certainly as a human being and as an American and as somebody who's been at a very high level in law enforcement, what advice do you have to those who are watching who believed in Charlie Kirk's debating, who believe that we should mix things up with words, that believe that we shouldn't be shut down, whether we be liberal or conservative? People are afraid today, Darin.
And understandably so. And no matter what your political leaning is, Charlie Kirk was the walking, talking embodiment, the personification of the First Amendment in action.
Yes.
Debating policies and using his words to argue ideas fiercely, which I respect. And the fact that is literally under assault, figuratively under assault, we have to find the answer, and we've got to stop. We've got to stop, in my opinion, stop worshiping the political process and start leaning into the other things that matter, leaning into
Yes.
friendships, leaning into family, leaning into faith. I'm a man of faith myself, and focus on the truth. And I still believe that the truth is that we as Americans, we are not as divided as we can seem online, that we have much more in common than we do at difference. And we've got to find ways to communicate. And that was literally under assault yesterday. And it's absolutely disgusting.
I couldn't agree more. We probably agree on 70 to 80% of everything, and then we can argue about 30 or 20%, and that's okay. That we can pass the potatoes and enjoy dinner and watch a football game. It used to be that it didn't matter at Yankee Stadium if you and I disagreed politically. If we both had a Thurman Munson jersey on, we were happy to be there together. We were cheering together. Something's happened. And it's almost like it's on purpose. Something's happened. Today is the anniversary of 9/11. I want to talk about that full-throated in a second. But it reminds me that on the 12th of September, we were all one America. Remember those ads that had some guy in a cowboy hat and a big belt buckle saying, "I'm a New Yorker"? Had some surfer in California saying, "I'm a New Yorker"? Had some Midwest farmer say, "I'm a New Yorker"? Darin, we were all the same person. We were all the same one people. And it's almost as if in 24 years, the radical left, the progressive Marxist hate American freedom left has done all it can pretty successfully to convince us that we hate each other. How do we fix that?
That's a great question. If I had the answer, the perfect answer, we would be all set. I think back to September 12th and the weeks after. That unity that you mentioned, it was an event that bound us all together as a nation, and we started bringing good things out of it. Today, I participated in an event where, as part of an organization where we made 400,000 meals for hungry and homeless as a part of a 9/11 service day, and that's what I think we all need to lean into from this day forward, moving on all the rest of our days, that we can remember the fallen. We can remember the fallen of 9/11. We can remember the fallen men like Charlie Kirk. We can remember them, and that's great, but we can honor them. We can honor them by committing ourselves to a life of sacrifice, a life of service, a life of faith, and a life of building up. And it is possible. I'm a man of deep faith, and I know
Yes.
that through God, everything is possible.
Darin Kinder, go in and check out his book. It's called Bury Me in a Dirty Suit. Go to darinkinder.com. And again, DarinKinder.com. I was a television news anchor in Lansing, Michigan when 9/11 happened. My wife woke me up. I generally stay up very late at night. She woke me up earlier than usual. I'm like, what? What's the problem? And she said, it looks like a small plane went into the World Trade Center. And in 1998, we'd been there. We went to the World Trade Center, took pictures underneath the towers. It was majestic. It was amazing. We loved it. And I said, man, that's crazy. Maybe somebody was drunk. And then we see live the second jumbo jet hit the second tower. We knew that it was an attack. You're in the business of being a Secret Service agent, and you were based there. What happens? Does the call come in from the White House? Are you told, get there right now, find out what the hell's going on? You were at World Trade Center Building 7, right?
That's right. We were just across the street from Tower 1, the North Tower. And I was in the
what
locker
happened
room.
that morning?
Yeah, so once we were told to evacuate, we put on a clean suit. I was in the locker room of our gym, just finished, and we didn't know what was going on. So we dump out onto the street. We're literally across the street from the North Tower on the north side, and that's where that first plane came in like a missile. And I didn't know all of the facts. I didn't know everything that was going on, but I looked up, and I don't know if it was training, instincts, or just being a student of history. I knew that wasn't an accident.
Right.
And we just there was no command. We just went into first responder mode. This is not in our mission set. This is not what we normally do, but a large group of us, we just started rendering first aid. And that's where I was. I was on the West Side Highway rendering first aid to a woman's badly burned arm. She gets burned from raining jet fuel. And that's when it's just a massive explosion right over the top of my head. I could feel the heat on the back of my neck.
Wow.
It was so close. I was about less than 100 yards from the base of Tower 2 when that second plane came in with brutal precision. And that's when the day just turned for the worse.
It is Darin Kinder. Go get his book, Bury Me in a Dirty Suit. We know that the FBI and CIA had walls between them. We know that they weren't speaking to each other. That was a thing that was under Bill Clinton. When George W. Bush came in, and after 9/11, those walls were taken down. I don't know why the intelligence agencies weren't speaking to each other, but they weren't. Darin, knowing what you know now, should we have seen that? Because we've seen now intelligence paperwork that says, be mindful of planes. They might try to use planes in some form or fashion. Was that true to your knowledge then, that there was no speaking between the agencies? And should we have known?
It was, yes, we should have known. It was a really walled off, siloed system of intelligence. FBI was their mindset at the time was primarily law enforcement, and law enforcement didn't mingle with the intelligence agencies, and they just didn't do that. I mean, it's clear in the evidence if you look back on it now. Al Qaeda was at war with us for 10 years, long before we just didn't want to recognize it, or we had our head in the sand. 9/11 was not. I mean, you've got the USS Cole, the Khobar Towers, the embassy bombings in Tanzania and in Kenya. They were at war with us. We just refused to respond appropriately and aggressively. And unfortunately, it took the ultimate sucker punch to wake us up.
Sounds like a dumb question, but I don't think it is. Did we think they were on our side? And here's why I say that. We weaponized the Mujahideen to take on the Soviet Union that was in Afghanistan. The leader, or one of the leaders of the Mujahideen, certainly the financier, was Osama bin Laden. Did we still think they were on our side?
I don't know. I know at the time during the Soviet invasion, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? And that was the mindset that we had. Gosh, it would be foolish. I mean, I know we had good allegiances and alliances, old intelligence contacts with what would become the Northern Alliance. Right. And that's why we were able to go in with limited number of Green Berets and so forth and other special operators and have such success early, because we aligned with them because we were reestablishing old contacts and old connections. But we were asleep. The giant was asleep. You think back to December 7th, the start of our engagement into World War II with Pearl Harbor. Yes. We were asleep.
It is Darin Kinder. Go and get this book, Bury Me in a Dirty Suit. It's a reference to you getting dirty that day, right, from the debris falling in Lower Manhattan.
That's right. Some people at the end of the day didn't have a dirty suit; they had a clean suit. And so, when in the book, it's all about pursuing your purpose and pursuing your calling, as told through my firsthand experience in the trade center. And that's the mantra: no clean suits. I prayed on September 12th, the next day, as I was on my couch trying to figure things out. I made a promise to God that I'd spend the rest of my days getting my suit dirty in service of Him for His glory. And at the end of that prayer, I said, Lord, when it's time for me to punch out of this world and into the next, bury me in a dirty suit. And that's my life commitment.
You got the Medal of Valor for what you did that day. So you're in Building 7. You end up good. Do you go to the North Tower, the South Tower? Do you go into those buildings before they collapsed, obviously?
I did. I went into the North Tower with 2 other agents. We ended up on the 30th floor or so. We helped a few people evacuate that couldn't move themselves.
Were they stuck by debris? I mean, why couldn't they move themselves? Were they shuttered in fear? What was going on with them?
They were both slumped over in the corner of a stairwell, large, overweight, grossly overweight, could not self-evacuate anymore. And people were just passing them by. And we were going up, and it just struck me. I was like, you got to break your tunnel vision. You got to see the pain, the people that are hurting around you and choose to enter in. And that's one of the messages of the book as well. But I was outside. I had left Tower 1 in time, just in the nick of time, and I was really close to the base of Tower 2 when it came down.
We should have known, Darin. We should have known. 1993, you have been trying to blow them up from the bottom. They were built so well that you couldn't do it that way, but they tried to in 1993. We should have. I mean, what sort of protection was in place there? I guess you can't put a force field to stop a jumbo jet from ramming into a building. But what should we not have expected another attempt?
For sure. And in court documents, Ramzi Youssef, he promises, quote, that my brothers will try again. So not only did they try and fail, they made a promise that they would try again. And so I remember the parking garages, my time in the Trade Center, parking garages were very secure. They had bollards and all that kind of stuff. So they definitely ramped it up. But sometimes you got to get asymmetrical, and you've got to think like the enemy. And I think we do a much better job of that now. But in 2001, we were not thinking about the limited resources that the enemy had and the asymmetrical way they could attack us.
It is Darin Kinder. Go to darinkinder.com and go and get this book. It's called Bury Me in a Dirty Suit. As we watch what happened that day, you said you got out in a nick of time before the building started coming down. There's no way. Listen, I'm a native Metro New Yorker. I'm not from New York City. I'm from Long Island. There's no way in my life I thought we would see that happen, that those buildings would ever come down. They wanted to kill 50,000 people that day, didn't they? There were about 50,000 people, I think, that were employed in those two buildings combined, and maybe Building 7 and the other World Trade Center buildings. They wanted to have, 3,000 is too many. One is too many. Don't get me wrong. But they wanted to kill 50,000, didn't they?
It's absurd that we say 3,000 and they were disappointed, right? That 3,000 and that was the low mark of what they were shooting for. Absolutely, the fact that they stayed up so long is a testament to the integrity of the building. The amount of jet fuel, and I don't get into the details, but right. I remember shamefully as I was climbing the North Tower, telling the people that were evacuating down, I said things like, "Don't worry, take your time, and nothing can bring these towers down." Right. That's how naive I was.
Well, it's not naivete. There's no way anybody thought that. Engineers would not have thought that it could have happened, which is what blows my mind. How many people do you think that you took part in touching that day and getting to safety? I think I've seen the number of 10 to 15 that you were shouting to and told them what to do through the darkness and got them out. Is it that many, 10 or 15 people?
I literally evacuated out of the building too, but then there were others that were kind of trapped in the darkness, and I was able to usher them to safety. They may have gotten there on their own. And then the highlight of my stories with myself and three other agents commandeered a fire truck that wasn't being used because all the firefighters were gone, right? The 343 of them were erased.
Unbelievable.
So there was this fire truck in the intersection of Church and Vesey Street that was intact, and we hooked up a hose, figured out how to get the water out, and the four of us became this amateur hour 4-man firefighting team, just trying to kind of dominate the intersection because everything was on fire. All the ambulances and fire trucks and office paper was everywhere. All of it was on fire. And we were just trying to secure the scene so the professionals, the firefighters from other parts of the city could make their way in.
Bury Me in a Dirty Suit. It's available now. It came out August 18th. It is the author, Darin Kinder, Kinder. Go to darinkinder.com and go get it. Is this on Amazon and everywhere else, Darin?
Yep. Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, anywhere you buy books online.
Last question. At any time while you were doing what you were doing in those towers, did you think I'm going to die today? Or did that hit you later once you got home, eventually got home? I'm guessing it was a long time later when you got home. At what point did you realize that you escaped death that day?
When Tower 2 buckled, I was less than 100 yards from it, less than a football field. And my first thought was, I'm dead. Game over, lights out. And then my second thought was run, and I did. And I was able, by the grace of God, to escape. The second tower, I was back at the same spot when the second tower came down because I'm not very smart, I guess. And but I knew it was coming because I heard the same precursor noise, this high-pitched metal on metal screeching sound. So I got a head start on that. So that one, I was better off there. But in the fire, and we did a search and rescue operation in the mezzanine level underneath, trying to find survivors, and it partially collapsed. I mean, it was like a bad action movie. It's just one emergency after another. But I was not until I was driving out of the haze in a government car, driving out of the haze at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, was I able to actually breathe and feel something that resembled an emotion.
I'm so glad that you survived it. I want everybody to go and read this book, Bury Me in a Dirty Suit. Thank you for the hard work you've done for this country. And do me a favor, come back on the show again. This has been amazing. Thank you, Darin.
I would love to. Thank you, Joe.